sun never rests when silence screams we listen. This is dead and wrong.
Hello, I'm Liz,
And I'm Trish.
and this is Dead and Wrong, your weekly podcast for all things dead. People, animals, ghosts, you name it. If it's dead, we're going to cover it. And today, Trish is covering in for Sam.
Co-host Trish in the house.
We had some technical difficulties with the system we use to record, and I tried for a few hours to actually fix it. Couldn't figure it out, so we ended up having to delete the whole system, find a new system, and then basically Sam could not record. She was too busy. I was too busy for the rest of the week, so the only day I could record was today, Sunday. Sam could not. So Trish here was nice enough to offer to record in Sam's place. This way you guys got your weekly episode.
I'm excited to be back, so now it's my turn to sit here and listen and learn.
Yes, she's just like Sam. All she does is sit there and listen. It's like it never changed. But luckily for you, Trish, and everybody listening, today is another episode that just keeps going. So Dead and Wrong presents episode 17, Walburga, Dolly, Oesterreich. So last week, we brought you to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where you learned about Christopher Scarver. He was the killer who became a serial killer by killing Jeffrey Dahmer. Well, we aren't leaving Milwaukee just yet. So let me introduce you to Walburga Barbara Dolly Korschel Hedrick. Long-ass name. Dolly was born to Charles and Magdalena Korschel on June 12, 1880 in Chicago, Illinois. Dolly had one younger sibling born 2 years after her, Magdalena Korschel Vaught, and the two of them grew up and were raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Dolly and her family lived within a community of German immigrants because her family had initially been from Germany. Sadly, their family did not come from any kind of status, and due to the fact that she was poor, Dolly was working by the age of 12, which really back then, late 80s, early 90s, it wasn't really unheard of for kids to be working. And Dolly found herself working at a textile mill owned by a Fred Osterich. Now, unlike Dolly, Fred was actually very well off. Fred started his textile mill at only 17 years old. And like the Korschel family, he was also from a German family. Like his parents, just like Dolly's parents, came from Germany. And because he knew about how most of his community was suffering, he made it a priority to hire German immigrants himself. So this was a community that worked for each other and helped each other out as they could. And while he was working and watching over this textile mill, one young woman caught his eye. This young woman was very pretty and very outgoing. She was super friendly, was, the kind of girl that made friends really easily. It wasn't like she was a try-hard or, was doing everything she could to please people. She was just naturally happy, naturally joyful, and brought people around her. Like people migrated naturally towards her. And just like everyone else, Fred was attracted to her. Well, as I said, it was a young woman. In reality, I should say it was a girl because it was 12-year-old Dolly, which again, 17 and 12 today is very odd. Back then, not that odd. So, like how Dolly caught the eye of Fred, Fred had actually caught the eye of Dolly. And it didn't take long for the two of them to officially start dating. Now, thankfully, Fred did wait until Dolly was 17. He did want her close to being an adulthood, and back then, 17 was an adult. So, Dolly and Fred actually stayed married for quite a few years, but in 1930s, which is when Dolly was 33 years old, so, at this point, they had been married for over 20 years, or at least together, Dolly started to become unsatisfied with Fred's long working hours, which is understandable. But it wasn't because she missed her husband. It was because she had needs, very specific needs, and Fred was not fulfilling those needs. Fred usually came home late, and if he wasn't home late, he was simply too drunk to satisfy her needs the way she wanted. In other words, he couldn't get it up. And she was not happy about that. And on top of all this, like the fact that long hours, they were being separated, it also didn't help that, according to Dolly, Fred wasn't that good in bed in general. So the fact that she couldn't even get the sucky version of it just really ticked her off. And eventually, rumors started about how when Fred was at work, Dolly would actually bring men home. Now, we're all very well aware that sometimes rumors are just rumors, nothing more than someone unhappy. Well, these rumors eventually would become truth, especially when Dolly met 17-year-old Otto Sanhuber. Otto was born July 16th, 1887 in New York, New York, as Otto Weir. He was born to a Jacob Klein and Mary Weir, but then was adopted by George Sanhuber and Josephine Bloomer Sanhuber when he was only 3. Otto had 6 siblings: Marie, Joseph, Teresa, George Jr., Conrad, and Erwin, and Otto was the 4th oldest. Now, when I was looking into Otto, which there wasn't a whole lot, there are actually conflicting stories about his origin. Like, someone said at one point he was born in Germany, but we aren't here for Otto's background, but I did want to point that out. So Otto was being actively employed at Fred's textile mill. Again, he came from a German family. Fred liked to hire Germans. And Dolly knew this. So one day, Dolly told her husband, "Hey, my sewing machine broke at home. Can you send someone to fix it?" She was hoping Fred would send Otto, and to her delight, that's exactly who Fred sent to fix the sewing machine. And Dolly, being the woman that she was, answered the door in nothing but a robe on. She said, "Hello." And she must have looked amazing in that robe, because Otto went right inside, satisfied those needs, and thus Dolly and Otto began a very steamy but long love affair. Now, in the beginning, Otto and Dolly commenced their affairs at different hotels, but that did not last long because the cost was becoming just too much. After all, she wasn't working. She was just an active housewife, so she was spending his money to go to the hotels for the affairs. She knew that if he started noticing that all of his money was going missing, he would look into it, and she was really worried that basically Fred was going to catch on. And obviously, I think we can all agree, Fred would not be very happy to realize Dolly was having an affair. So Dolly just told Otto the best thing for them to do was continue the affair in her own home. He would just come over while Fred was at work. It worked well until the neighbors did the neighborly thing, became nosy, and someone actually approached her and was like, "So Dolly, who's the mystery man?" Now Dolly couldn't obviously be like, "My husband sucks in bed, so I got a lover." So she just told them, "He's my homeless brother. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have a home, can't get food, so I'm just being a good big sister and taking care of him." And obviously, now that the neighbors were starting to pay more attention, Dolly became even more paranoid, but she came up with another plan, one that she knew would work perfectly. Dolly asked Otto to quit his job and live in her attic. The goal was pretty simple. Dolly and Otto would be together while Fred was at work, and when Fred came home from work, Otto would crawl right back up into the attic from the following day. She told Otto he wouldn't have to pay bills, he wouldn't have to work, he wouldn't even have to worry about food, because she would just bring it to him every day. And then on top of that, they could have sex every day. And honestly, what 17-year-old wouldn't want that? Like, you don't have to work, you don't have to pay bills, and you get to have sex every day. Sounds like a 17-year-old boy's dream. So yeah, that was it. Otto would have sex with her during the day and then write all night, because he had dreams of becoming a published pulp fiction author. So, it was a pretty simple setup. So Otto was given a bed, a desk for writing, and Dolly brought him books from the library every week, and then cooked him food and brought it to him every day. Otto was living a life, and due to him not having any close friends or family in the area, nobody noticed his absence. This affair, surprisingly, would go on for 5 years without any issues. From 1913 to 1917, Otto lived in the attic of the home of Fred and Dolly, and while Fred was at work, Otto was putting in the work on Dolly. What brought this very interesting affair, towards a downhill slide, was news from Fred to Dolly that they were going to be moving to LA. And they were moving to LA because Fred thought he was going crazy. You see, Fred was constantly hearing strange noises throughout the house at night. He would hear footsteps above his head. The food in the house was disappearing way too quickly for only two people because they didn't have kids. And he really didn't know if like someone was sneaking in and doing this or like the place was haunted. Lots of places were haunted back then. And at one point, he even thought he was crazy because he talked to Dolly about this, wondering if she was like hearing the same things. But Dolly would gaslight him and be like, "No, I don't hear anything. You're probably not doing too well. You need to see a doctor." And he believed his wife. He didn't think anything of it, and so he went to the doctor. But of course, the doctor told him he was perfectly healthy. So Fred was basically like, "Okay, this place is haunted. We're not staying here." And he didn't leave it up to any kind of debate, so Dolly didn't have a choice. So Dolly and Fred would go together to LA to look at houses. And Dolly was okay with whatever Fred wanted as long as it had an attic. She really had stuff she needed to store up in the attic, lots of stuff. Now, Dolly had almost been out of luck because none of the houses had attics, but literally, like the last house they looked at, Fred liked it, and it had an attic, and that's all Dolly wanted, so they agreed on the house. Dolly and Fred went back to Milwaukee, and they began packing their things for the move. Now, to keep her affairs safe and to keep going, Otto went to the LA house early and was able to get himself moved, his furniture moved, everything situated before Fred arrived. So, over the next couple of months, Otto continued doing his thing, Dolly during the day and writing at night. Somehow, according to the articles I read, he even managed to get some of his books published, which I did try to look up and see if I could find them, but I didn't. So I don't know if he like did it under a pen name and just no one ever connected his pen name to his real name. And getting published helped him make money, and then he gave the money to Dolly so that Dolly could buy food and other necessities, and it didn't have to worry about taking money from Fred's account, which would make him less suspicious. But seeing as we can all clearly tell that the source of Fred's paranoia was Otto, the noises that Fred was hearing at night obviously continued. So Fred was convinced he was losing his mind. Dolly was continuing to gaslight him, and between everything, Fred and Dolly finally began to argue in their relationship, which would eventually lead to the worst of it. On August 22nd, 1922, Dolly and Fred had their biggest fight yet, and it was so loud that Otto could hear every single word through the attic. And to him, his sweet, sweet love Dolly was in danger. He to step in and protect the woman he loved. So Otto snuck into Dolly and Fred's room through a small hole in the closet, grabbed one of Fred's 25 caliber pistols, and then went into the kitchen to confront Fred and protect Dolly. And when Fred saw Otto, everything clicked into place. Remember, Otto worked for Fred. Fred did all the hiring, so they knew each other. And now think about it. Otto quits his job right around the time that Fred starts hearing all the noises. And then all of a sudden, like Otto shows up. So he knew. He knew the noises were Otto. He knew Otto had been living in the attic for the past 10 years in both houses. So the missing food, the money, all of it, he realized he'd been supporting this man and the affair he was having with his wife. And obviously, and for every right reason, this made him very, very, very angry. And so he lunged for Otto, and the two began to fight. Now, during the fight, the gun went off. Doesn't say like if it was purposely fired or just in the struggle, someone's finger hit it. And the shot hit the ceiling. Now, somehow they must have gotten separated. I'm assuming the shot like freaked them both out. Well, Otto was quick on his feet and he shot Fred 3 times directly in the chest, killing him instantly. Poor Fred was dead. Well, of course, Otto and Dolly panicked because they just killed the man, and they had no clue what they were going to do. Once again, thinking quickly on his feet, Otto locked Dolly in a closet that locked from the outside. He then took a few expensive items like the diamond watch off of Fred's wrist, some jewelry, some money, other expensive things. He then runs upstairs back to his attic and waits because he knew without a doubt the neighbors probably heard the gunshot and the screaming, and he's like, someone's going to call the police. And he was right. The police were called. Not too long after the altercation that caused Fred to lose his life, the police arrived. And what do they find? Fred dead on the floor, and poor defenseless Dolly passed out in the closet. They get Dolly awake and ask her, obviously, like, what happened? Can you explain it? Dolly simply tells them that they've been robbed, they killed her husband, and they locked her in the closet and then ransacked the house. Now, as they should have been, the police were skeptical of her story, but then there's no evidence to really challenge her story, and she was locked in a closet that locked from the outside, meaning there was no way she could have locked it herself. I mean, we all knew it was Otto, but they didn't know Otto was in the house. So Dolly was officially a widow. And to anyone who would hear the story, it would be like, well, that has to be great news for her and Otto because no one knew him where he came from. And they could openly be in a relationship without any issues. Well, that actually didn't happen. Dolly ended up buying a whole new house with an attic with Fred's money, and Otto continued to live in the attic. So he did his normal thing. Him and Dolly would have sex during the day, and then Otto would write at night. I couldn't find any reason as to why Otto continued to live this lifestyle. Like, they didn't say if he wanted it or anything. If I think he just decided, like, yeah, I'll continue to live this way. But there was a reason for Dolly, because Dolly met another man. His name was Herman Shapiro. Herman was a very successful businessman, and Dolly and Herman hit it off quickly. And early on in the relationship, Dolly was so kind and gifted Herman with a diamond watch. Now, obviously, Dolly told Herman about the robbery that took her husband's life, about what made her a widow, etc. And that included all the items that were stolen, like her husband's diamond watch. So Herman asks her when he sees the watch, "Isn't this your dead husband's watch that was stolen?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I actually was cleaning and found it under the couch cushions. I just didn't think the police would care, so I didn't say anything." And Herman just believed her. He's like, "You know what? That sounds super logical." Well, not too surprising because he was a successful man. Like Fred, Herman also worked long hours and was not meeting Dolly's needs the way she wanted. What was worse is that she was becoming bored with Otto. So Dolly went out and found a second side piece. A successful man named Roy Klum. He was a successful lawyer and an aspiring actor. So basically, she has a boyfriend and two side pieces. She is seeing three men at once. It's pretty impressive. So, do you remember how Otto killed Fred with his own gun? Poor Dolly brought up to Ray that she still had one of her late husband's guns and how it looked so similar to the one that the robber used to kill Fred. So she asked Roy, "Is there any way you can get rid of this? I just don't want the police like dragging me back in after I finally have moved on." And obviously, Roy, being the super smart, successful lawyer that he was, didn't question Dolly at all and was like, "Yeah, I'll dispose of it." And he threw the gun into the La Brea tar pits. And you would think she was in the clear because of all this. Well, she still had the other 25 caliber pistol. And going up to Roy and being like, "I found another one that looks like the murder weapon," probably wasn't going to fly. So she went to one of her neighbors, used the same story, and asked, "Hey, can you do something for this? I just don't want to deal with the trouble." So the guy was like, "Yeah, sure," and just buries it in his backyard. So, like I said, Dolly now had three different men satisfying her needs, but after only a few years, Dolly decided she didn't want to be with Roy anymore. She was happy with just Otto and Herman and ended things with Roy. Well, Roy was not happy about this. In fact, he was pissed. So, Roy did the pissed angry man thing and went to the police and told them about the gun and the story Dolly had given him. The police, just doing their jobs, went and looked for the gun, located it, and went right to Dolly's home and arrested her. The neighbor that had hid the second gun saw her being arrested and realized shit was going down. And he went to the police and was like, "Hey, that lady you just arrested, she had me hide a gun, and I just don't want to be involved." So he showed them where he buried it. The officers dug up the gun and took it as evidence. So Dolly was arrested and in jail. And who comes to see her? Herman does, which is perfect because Dolly was actually worried about Otto. Otto didn't know what was happening since Dolly was in jail, and obviously, because she always brought him food, no one was bringing him food. So Dolly tells Herman that her dear precious stepbrother is living in the attic and she's worried about him. She asks Herman if he can go check on him and bring him some food. She told him all he had to do was knock on the ceiling in the bedroom closet 2 times and Otto would come out. So hearing this information, what does Herman do? He does exactly what Dolly asks without questioning. Like, your stepbrother's living in the attic? Okay. So he goes to the bedroom, knocks twice on the closet ceiling, and Otto comes out. And when Otto comes out, he tells Herman everything. Like the affair, everything about Fred, everything. And thinking that it's her stepbrother, like he didn't go into details about how they met, just that he'd been fucking Dolly during the day, same when Wally were married to Fred, all that. Herman basically gets weirded out. It's like, my girlfriend's fucking her stepbrother. That's weird. And kicks Otto out of the house. And then he goes back to the jail and bails Dolly out. Dolly got her charges dropped, which was mainly because the guns were too corroded at this point, and they couldn't link them to Dolly. There was no proof that those were the guns Dolly used to kill Fred, because I don't really think back then ballistics was invented yet. And so at this point, Dolly had gotten away with killing Fred for a second time. Because the first time, no one, like the robbery gone wrong, she got away with it. Now they got her again, but couldn't connect any of the evidence, so now she got away with it for a second time. Well, Herman, poor sweet Herman, even thinking that she was fucking her stepbrother, decides it's time to move in with Dolly. And even though he knew obviously about the affair, they actually lived together for 7 happy long years before Dolly cheats again. So Herman comes home one day and finds Dolly in their bed with another man, and now he's had it. He's like, what the hell? I gave you a break and now you're doing it again. So he breaks things off with Dolly right away and then runs to the police and snitches. Apparently, Herman had been collecting evidence to prove that Dolly and Otto had killed Fred for years. So even though Otto basically somewhat admitted, no, correction. So when Otto admitted everything, Herman didn't think the police would actually believe him because, I just caught my sister's lover in the attic and her lover's her stepbrother who's claiming they killed her widow. So he used the 7 years they were together to try to collect evidence to prove the fact that she and Otto killed Fred. And he told the police that he actually believed Otto locked Dolly in the closet, stole the items, and then hid in the closet to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. So when Otto spilled everything, he didn't talk about how he hid Dolly in the closet. He just said they were responsible for Fred's death. And Dolly was arrested for a 3rd time. A year after this, they finally found Otto. They looked for a year after hearing Herman. Well, it took them so long because Otto moved to Canada, changed his name, got married, and then moved back to LA. And Otto confessed everything immediately, no holding back. The affair, the murder of Fred, and everything after the fact. Now, he did use the fact that he had been locked in an attic by Dolly since he was 17. He claimed, look, I didn't have a normal life. I mean, I basically have the mind of an 8-year-old because I didn't even get a good, solid education. And even though his lawyer tried to get him a not guilty sentence due to insanity, he was found to be guilty of manslaughter. But he was not charged because the statute of limitations for manslaughter expired the year prior. And since they expired for him, guess who else they expired for? They expired for Dolly. So Dolly was not charged either. So both Dolly and Otto escaped conviction 3 different times. Now, Dolly did remarry eventually, as she and Herman never married, but it's unknown if she ever continued her life of affairs. Her second husband's name was Ray Burt Hedrick, and they were believed to have been married shortly after all the trials were over with, and Dolly died as Walburga Hedrick in April of 1961. So she was with him till she died. Otto had changed his name to Walter M. Klein at some point, and they knew this because this was the name that was on his 1924 marriage license. He married Matilda Shute on May 9th, 1924, and they remained married until Otto passed away in 1948. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Walburga Dolly Oesterreich, the woman with the lover in the attic. So, Trish, your eyes were telling me you were kind of like, huh? Holy shit.
Yeah, that was a lot. It made me so interested because she kept getting another man
You just
every
kept pulling
time.
them in.
Yeah, she must have been very charming and beautiful, or at least charming.
She's really not that ugly. I looked her up. Now, obviously, her most recent picture is her as like an older woman, but as like a young in her 20s and everything, actually really pretty.
Yeah. And then I understand Fred because I would have been freaking out if I kept hearing noises in my attic.
I wouldn't have lasted a year.
Oh,
Oh,
wasn't it
I,
longer than a year?
yeah, I guess. Yeah, 1913 to 1917. I wouldn't have lasted half a year. If I ever start hearing noises in the attic and my pets react, I'm done. I'm going to be like, hey, guys, I can't live here anymore. I'm really sorry. I'm not about to get my ass haunted or attacked
N-
by a raccoon.
nope, or some random person living in your attic.
I have a crawl space that can be accessed by like my bottom living area. I put my shelf in front of the door to the crawl space
As you should.
because I'm so worried about one day to just.
Yeah, that was really interesting. All the different men, and they just believed her. No questions asked.
The lawyer? I want to know what kind of lawyer has a woman come up to him and be like, it just looks like the gun that was used to kill my husband. It's like, yeah, I'll throw it in a pit for you. Don't worry. I got you.
Yeah, that was wild. I don't know what he was thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I do feel bad for Herman. He didn't deserve to be cheated on, but, like, she was supposedly fucking her stepbrother. Why would you stay with her just because he was gone?
I was thinking maybe because he was collecting the evidence the whole time, and then he was hoping it would work out, and then finally when it didn't, he's like, yep, she's gone.
Like, do you think it was almost kind of like an unknown blackmail thing? Like, I'll stay with her as
Oh,
long as
yeah.
she remains faithful. And then if she doesn't, I'm going to have all this evidence just to be safe.
Yep, it's my collateral.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's what it was. I think he knew and was like, well, she's pretty. I'm assuming good in bed. So he's like, I'll just keep her around. And then if she cheats on me, she's out.
Yes, and I'm surprised she never had kids or kid scares.
Yeah. Because they didn't have protection back then. Now I'm
Yeah.
curious. Yeah, somehow they never had kids.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because she was sleeping with all of them all the time.
Well, hold on. She may have had a kid, but I believed I just read something. So apparently, right around the time that Otto and her started the affair, she was grieving the loss of her child who died
Oh.
before his 10th birthday.
Oh. So I wonder whose kid that was.
It was Fred's.
Oh, yeah, you
So,
said before Otto?
yeah, so
Okay.
apparently, she did still have needs and still wanted to be taken care of, but then on top of that, there was the loss of the child. Fred was still working all the time, and now I almost wonder if Dolly was so like in the area of wanting needs because she was trying to use it to cover up her grief of her missing child. And so when Fred was gone at work, Dolly was just lost in the void of losing her child.
Yep. And then I was thinking why she didn't have her relationship go public with Otto. I was thinking maybe because of money. Like she wanted that lifestyle that she had with all the things, and Otto was
And
just
Otto
publishing
didn't
some
have a job.
books. Yep.
Yeah, that's probably exactly what it was. And I mean, Otto didn't know anything better.
He
So
said he was like an 8-year-old.
yeah. I did read here, and I wasn't able to find this article early, so I don't know why it's popping up now. Now, this source is saying Otto was 22,
Oh.
but it kind of doesn't surprise me that something from the 1880s ages are mixed up.
Yeah.
So we'll just say, I mean, more than 10-year difference between Dolly and Otto, and then at least a 5-year difference between Dolly and Fred. Definitely an interesting case, though.
Yes, it was.
Fun. Good for her. I mean, it sucks that she killed Fred, but rather than that, good for her.
As a reminder, our socials are up and running. We have Facebook, Instagram, and X, and we are streaming on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, and Amazon. If you could do us a huge favor, please comment and rate the episodes and pages, as it helps push us out there to the world. If you have anything you'd like to send us or want to talk about, please send us a message on Facebook or Instagram, or email us at deadandwrongpodcast@gmail.com. And we will see you next week for another episode full of all things dead. Bye.
Bye, and Trish, once again, thank you. I really appreciate you coming out and filling in for your sister.
You're welcome.
Bye, guys.
Bye.